Squid Game has had some disgusting deaths, from suicide and Russian roulette to being executed in front of everyone. Today, I'll be ranking the worst Squid Game deaths, starting with one of the most brutal ones. From the moment we were introduced to the recruiter, we knew he was evil. Despite that, he was easily one of the coolest characters in Squid Game, but unfortunately, we would only see him briefly at the start of the end of Season 1 when he's recruiting Gi-hun and another player. In Season 2, everything would take a darker turn, however. Ji-hun's team would track down the recruiter, but he overpowered them. The two were forced to play rock, paper, scissors, -1, to decide who lives. But we're not talking about that brutal death yet. After the game finishes, Ji-hun tracks down the recruiter and confronts him. What happened next was very surprising though. The recruiter challenged Ji-hun to play Russian roulette. The recruiter decides they won't respin the barrel every time, meaning someone will die by the 6th shot. 5 shots go by, and it's now the recruiter's turn to shoot. And well, you know what's about to happen. This scene proved that even outside the Squid Games, nobody is safe, and for the first time, someone meaningful from the organization went down. Along with that, we were left with one of the most brutal deaths yet. But if you thought that was bad, just remember that deaths get much worse further in the video. Like a lot of players, Kang Mi-na thought the games were just games. Even with Ji-hun warning everyone, she just brushed it off. But after Thanos told her a bee landed on her, it would go downhill very quickly. She panicked. And that was it. 1 second, she's laughing it off, thinking it's no big deal, right? The next, she got rinsed and was eliminated on the floor. And the wildest part, the bee was still on her cheek like it didn't even care. Then it flew off, right as the panic set in. Thanos just stood there like he couldn't believe what just happened. Then, without a word, he swallowed one of his awesome candies. This death was probably one of the most unexpected and close-up deaths, which I think deserves this spot on this list. But the next death was so much worse. Semi quickly became a beloved character, especially because she looked after Min-soo. She was barely on screen, but every second she was, golden. She was also just smart and likable. From the moment the vote started, she played it cool. The prize pool was already life-changing, more than she ever needed. So she did what lots of people didn't have the guts to do. She voted X. That should have been the end of it. But nah, Thanos and Namgyu, they weren't about to let that slide. She embarrassed them, and in a place where power was everything, that was a big mistake and would cost her everything later on. During the nighttime attack, Namgyu would attack her as Min-soo watched. Min-soo attempted to help, even if it was a really bad attempt, but unfortunately, Namgyu overpowered her. He cornered her and stabbed her to death. Brutal. One of the worst deaths, no doubt. And the worst part? Min-soo is right above them, shaking with fear. He watches as Semi bleeds out in one of the most brutal, undeserved deaths in the series. Now the real question is, could Min-soo have actually saved her? Min-soo could have definitely saved Semi if he got down and helped her overpower Namgyu. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the next deaths. Player 69 and Player 70 weren't just more people trying to make it through. They were a married couple. They were in this together from the very start. Heavy in debt, they saw this as their only shot. A dangerous gamble for sure, but with both of them playing, at least they had each other, right? And for a while, it worked. They survived red light, green light together, as well as made it past sugar honeycombs, and they even fought their way out of tug of war. But then came the Marvels game, and that's what destroyed everything. When the rules were announced, most players panicked, but for 69 and 70, it was different. They weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting each other. One had to win, and one had to lose. There was no way around it. We don't even see how it happens, just the harsh truth. One had to go. And in the end, it was 70. That broke 69 in a way nothing else could. That night, while everyone slept, he made his choice. Guilt, grief, whatever it was, he couldn't live with it. So he didn't. That was brutal. But what comes next is way worse. Jeong never really had a chance in the game or in life. Her father was a monster that abused her and even killed her mother right in front of her. And Jeong, she didn't just take it, she fought back. She ended him, but that choice costed her everything. Prison took what little she had left, and by the time she got out, she wasn't living, just existing. So when the games came around, she joined. Not for the money, not for a future, just to see if maybe, just maybe there was a reason to keep on going. and then she met Sabyok. And for the first time in a long time, Soo-young had someone to care about, someone worth fighting for. When the marbles game came, she made her decision. They had to face each other. One of them had to go, and Ji-young wanted it to be her. Sabyok had a reason to live, but Ji-young had nothing. So she didn't even try, just dropped the marble, gave Sabyok the win, and when she turned back one last time, she smiled and thanked her. In her last moments, she finally felt like her life had meant something. And the worst part? Sabyok didn't even make it. Ji-young gave up everything for nothing. And that's what makes her death one of the hardest to accept. Ji-young gave up everything for a friend, only for it all to mean nothing in the end. But what about the guy who played it smart but still got cooked? Now, for those who don't remember, player 17 is the glass guy, and his death? Man, that was just straight up unfair. Dude was this close to making it. So, here's what went down. In the glass bridge game, some panels could hold a person's weight, while others would shatter on impact. Most players had to guess, but not this guy. He was a glass maker, meaning he could see the difference just by looking. And guess what? He was actually pulling it off, step by step, figuring it out, getting everyone across. But then, the front man saw what he was doing and decided to cut the lights. Now he couldn't tell the difference anymore, and time was running out. With just a few steps left, the pressure was on. But before he could even try, Sang-woo, who was behind him, decided he wasn't waiting anymore. Shoved. Just like that, player 17 crashed through the wrong panel and fell to his death. It wasn't the goriest of deaths, but man did it hurt. This guy was playing it so smart, actually helping the group, and still got betrayed at the last second. Player 17 had the skills, the brains, and the strategy, only to be thrown away when he was no longer useful. But despite that, the next death was so much worse. From the moment Youngmi stepped onto the screen, it was obvious she wasn't built for this. She was way too kind for a game this brutal, but somehow she kept going. She stuck close to Hyunju, found a little comfort in their bond, and pushed through the fear. She made it through the first couple of games.